Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving deep into a fascinating new political framework drafted by James McGlynn called the Progressive Liberty Party Platform. Now, this really isn't just your standard list of campaign promises. It's an absolute fundamental rethinking of how human society is structured. We're going to decode the source material today and explore the architectural framework at its absolute core, which is this concept called the inverted pyramid of power. We'll unpack exactly what a massive structural shift like that would look like in the real world.
Okay, so here's the roadmap for how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the governance crisis, then define the inverted pyramid itself. From there, we'll hit service versus governance, democratizing power and wealth, cognitive sovereignty, and we'll wrap up with the anti-oligarchy order. Let's jump right in.
Part 1. The Governance Crisis, a diagnosis of systemic dissolution.
Have you ever just sort of looked around and felt like, man, the world is completely upside down right now? Well, you're definitely not alone. According to the platform's creator, James McGlynn, merely observing our chaotic political climate just doesn't cut it anymore. In his Substack, he actually writes, "The world is upside down again," and he points to this widespread subversion of universal principles into what he sees as total madness and ideological tribalism. And it's exactly this deep, underlying frustration with narrow, elite factions running the show that demanded the drafting of a radically new progressive humanist alternative. It's essentially a wake-up call to move past just complaining about the system and start actively redesigning it from the ground up.
Just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about here, consider the math for a second. We're looking at 13 massive macro categories containing 195 individual, highly specific policy planks. This is designed to completely overhaul society. From democratic reform to technology and justice, every single category is just packed with these engineered, surgical solutions meant to dismantle concentrated power. It's a massive, cross-domain approach to rewiring the system.
Moving on to Section 2, the inverted pyramid, flipping the geometry of authority.
Now, this concept right here is the absolute heartbeat tying all 195 of those planks together. It's a literal, geometric inversion of how historical power structures operate. Think about it. Traditional governance usually dictates what people cannot do, right? You've got a king, an elite class, or some concentrated power sitting comfortably at the top, and authority is delegated upwards. Well, McGlynn's inverted pyramid takes that and flips it entirely on its head. In this model, the common welfare sits at the absolute top. And in a really surprising twist, this huge, complex political framework actually draws its core inspiration from the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It basically takes their model of strict, humble service and scales it up to try and guarantee human flourishing across an entire society.
Which brings us to Section 3, Service versus Governance, redefining leadership.
So, what does this actually mean for you? Well, under Plank 7, which the platform calls the inverted sovereignty, leadership is completely stripped of its traditional superiority. It legally designates the everyday citizen as the executive. Yep, you are the boss. The president, on the other hand, is redefined as merely the administrator, literally the lowest servant in the hierarchy. Under this rule, leaders have zero inherent authority over the sovereign citizen, and any delegated power they do have can be instantly revoked by the public at any time. It's attempting to totally rewrite the DNA of the social contract from a dynamic of ruling to one of absolute strict service.
Section 4. Democratizing power and wealth, applying the pyramid to elections and finance.
To actually enforce this upside-down power structure in reality, the platform brings in some incredibly strict mathematical boundaries. We're talking about mandates for universal voting and top 5 ranked choice voting, all meant to finally break the political duopoly. But you really have to consider the prudence mandate. This rule mathematically caps government budgets and forces any surplus funds straight back to the public. No hoarding. Or take the total abolition of legislative immunity, meaning your elected representatives could literally be held personally and civilly liable for the laws they pass. Basically, it's an administrative routine engineered to mathematically prevent simple majorities from executing any kind of tyranny.
And then we have Plank 67, which creates a brutal, nowhere-to-hide rule. If any entity holding public money tries to make decisions in the shadows, it sets off this cascading sequence of absolute penalties. Step 1 is mandatory real-time public logging. If they hide their actions, boom, immediate funding clawbacks. Next comes total debarment from public contracts. And finally, total charter revocation and criminal referral. The logic of the inverted pyramid is super clear here. Secrecy while holding public money automatically forfeits your right to hold it. Period.
Over in the economic sector, This inverted pyramid manifests in some truly wild ways, like Plank 195, which introduces harbinger taxation. This rule requires owners of non-productive, speculative assets to self-assess their value for taxes. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. They are legally obligated to sell that asset to anyone at that exact self-declared price. So imagine a billionaire hoarding an empty downtown skyscraper. They either have to pay super high taxes on its real value, or they're forced to sell it to someone who will actually put it to use. It fundamentally penalizes wealth hoarding and forces dormant capital to start serving the public tier.
Section 5. Cognitive Sovereignty. The Inverted Pyramid in the Digital Age. Since the citizen is the highest executive in this new structure, their mind obviously cannot be managed by some massive tech monopoly. That brings us to Plank 168, which mandates raw mode access. Just think about your own social media feed for a second. Under this rule, you would have the absolute legal right to flip a switch and disable all algorithmic filtering. Poof, gone. Furthermore, the platform establishes personal liability for tech executives who use AI to suppress political speech, and it officially treats your behavioral data not as corporate property but as public infrastructure. The idea is simple. If you are at the top of the pyramid, your cognitive sovereignty has to be legally impenetrable.
Finally, Section 6. The Anti-Oligarchy Order. Global Statecraft.
To stop a privileged few from steering global affairs, the platform takes its service doctrine and stretches it right onto the international stage. It proposes this massive sovereign diplomatic firewall, which completely 100% bars corporate lobbying from global diplomacy. It also creates a diplomatic sunshine protocol, meaning unedited video of any corporate state meeting must be released to the public within 48 hours. No more backroom deals. And the craziest part is the democratic parity mandate. If a corporate executive gets a seat at a global forum, an equal number of seats must automatically be given to labor or public interest reps. And if they're excluded, it triggers an automatic mandatory boycott.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty massive question to chew on. This is an incredibly ambitious framework that asks us to fundamentally redefine the relationship between the governed and the governing. But we really have to ask ourselves, can we actually, legally, and permanently turn the geometry of authority upside down? Can we guarantee the citizen always stays at the top? Or is the concentration of power just an unavoidable default of human nature that no amount of clever policy can ever permanently prevent? It's a heavy question for sure, and it's exactly the kind of deep, systemic debate this platform is hoping to spark.